What would you do if a single piece of paper could unravel the power of those who thought they owned you? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and pristine picket fences define the neighborhood, I, Elena Martinez, learned the answer the hard way. My story isn't just about a fence or a fine, it's about defiance, betrayal, and the bitter cost of standing up for what's right. It started with a letter, crisp and official, slipped into my mailbox on a humid July morning. The Willow Creek Homeowners Association, HOA, had fined me $3,800 for my backyard fence, claiming it was 2 inches too tall and painted an unapproved shade of sage green. 2 inches. Color. I stood in my kitchen, the letter trembling in my hands, my coffee growing cold. I'd spent months saving for that fence, a small act of independence after my divorce from Paul, who'd left me with nothing but debt and a fixer-upper house. The fence was my sanctuary, a boundary to keep the world out. Now, the HOA was tearing it down, figuratively and maybe literally. I wasn't one to fight. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who smiled at neighbors' complaints and nodded at HOA meetings I barely attended. But $3,800? That was half my savings, money meant for my daughter Sophia's college fund. I pictured her face, her bright eyes full of dreams, and something in me snapped. I wasn't just fighting for a fence. I was fighting for us. The HOA president, Margaret Hensley, was a woman who wielded her clipboard like a scepter. At 60, with her perfectly coiffed hair and tailored blazers, she ruled Willow Creek with an iron fist disguised in politeness. Everyone knew her rules. No unapproved mailboxes, no overgrown shrubs, no stepping out of line. I'd seen her reduce neighbors to tears over misplaced recycling bins. But I wasn't going to cry. I was going to fight. I started small, reading the HOA bylaws late into the night, my laptop glowing in the dark. The rules were a labyrinth of jargon, but I noticed inconsistencies, vague clauses, outdated references. I wasn't a lawyer, just a high school history teacher, but I knew how to research. I dug deeper, combing through public records, old meeting minutes, anything I could find. That's when I met Jamal Carter. Jamal was a wild card, a retired paralegal who'd moved into Willow Creek a year ago. He was an unassuming man, mid-50s, with a penchant for wearing mismatched socks and a sly grin that hinted at secrets. We met at the community center, where I was photocopying bylaws and he was sipping coffee, watching me with curiosity. "You're stirring up trouble, aren't you?" he said, his voice low and amused. I laughed, assuming he was joking. He wasn't. Jamal had a history with HOAs. Back in his old neighborhood, he'd taken down a corrupt board that had been skimming dues for personal use. He didn't just know the law, knew how to weaponize it. "Your HOA's bylaws are a house of cards," he told me, pointing to a clause about board elections. "They haven't held a proper vote in years. That's your leverage." His words lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about my fence anymore. It was about power. Together, we built a case. Jamal guided me through legal loopholes, while I rallied neighbors who'd been silently fuming under Margaret's reign. There was Lisa, whose garden gnomes had been confiscated, and Raj, who'd been fined for parking his car improperly. We met in secret, whispering in backyards and basements, afraid of Margaret's spies, nosy neighbors who reported infractions for her approval. The more we uncovered, the uglier it got. The HOA's finances were a mess. Unexplained withdrawals, payments to a consulting firm owned by Margaret's brother. She wasn't just a control freak. She was a crook. The twist came when I discovered Jamal's secret. One night, as we pored over documents, he let slip that he wasn't just a concerned neighbor. He was working for a law firm, hired by a developer who wanted Willow Creek's land for a strip mall. Overturning the HOA's bylaws would weaken their control, making it easier for the developer to buy out homeowners. My ally wasn't fighting for justice, he had his own agenda. I felt betrayed, used, but I was in too deep. If I backed out, Margaret would win, and my $3,800 would be gone. I had to keep going, even if it meant dancing with a devil I didn't trust. The courtroom was small but packed, the air thick with tension. Neighbors filled the seats, some glaring at me, others offering nervous nods. Margaret sat at the defendant's table, her face a mask of calm, but I saw her hands clench when the judge called my name. I presented our case. The HOA's bylaws were invalid, their elections rigged, their fines unenforceable. Jamal's research backed every claim, his documents meticulous. I spoke of the $3,800 fine, the fence that meant everything to me, and the neighbors who'd been bullied into silence. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. The HOA's bylaws were overturned, their fines nullified, their board dissolved pending a new election. Margaret's face crumpled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of pity. She was a tyrant, but she was also a woman who'd built her world on control, now watching it collapse. I'd won. My fence was safe. Sophia's college fund was safe. But victory tasted bitter. That night, I sat on my porch, staring at the sage-green fence under the moonlight. Neighbors stopped by, some to thank me, others to whisper about the developer's plans. Jamal had vanished, his mission complete. I'd been a pawn in his game, even if I'd won mine. The next day, I learned the developer had already approached half the neighborhood with buyout offers. Willow Creek, the place I'd fought for, might not exist in a year. Sophia found me in the backyard, her eyes searching mine. "You did the right thing, Mom," she said, but her voice wavered. She knew what I knew. Winning doesn't always feel like winning. I'd taken down Margaret, overturned the HOA, but I'd opened the door to something bigger, something I couldn't control. The fence stood tall, but my home, my sanctuary, felt fragile. I thought of the letter, the $3,800 fine that started it all. I'd fought for fairness, for my daughter, for my neighbors. But fairness came at a cost. The developer's shadow loomed, and I wondered if I'd traded one tyrant for another. The HOA was gone, but so was the illusion of safety. I'd won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Nd.